We're all set, Rebecca. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Good evening, Kevin.
Good. Sounds good, Bob? Good. Okay, great. Thank you all. Welcome to the quarterly meeting of the Clarendon Historical Society, and I'm grateful for all of you being here. I have had this meeting on my mind ever since Barry and Rebecca's roles were reversed last year when Rebecca ran the computer for Barry when he gave the Crown Point Road Association presentation. But I said, I've got to get that woman to our Historical Society meeting. It required me going up into the back hills of Danby, repair a stone first, and had a good time doing that. And Bob was there, my son Jonathan. So along, we've kept in contact, and here she is tonight. But first, we got some announcements. First announcement is Wednesday night, the first public reading of the Declaration of Independence was July 8, 1776. And the Spirit of America initiative, 50 states and 5 territories and DC people in all those locations will be reenacting that moment at 6 p.m. Eastern time. We're grateful that our time is the anchor, because in Guam it's 9 o'clock the following morning, and probably there's people in between there if they want to be at 6 o'clock. But 6 o'clock Eastern time will be a reading of the Declaration of Independence. You will have opportunity to see 5 of your members of the Clarendon community take a section and read. There's no commentary prior to it, during it, or after. It's just the Declaration of Independence being read. And we're doing it next to the town hall in the cemetery where there are a number of Revolutionary War soldiers buried. And in advent of real hard rain, we'll go inside the town hall. But we're not as rugged as the people in Rutland who are doing it in the park under hosted by the DAR, who are flood, whatever.
Not the DAR this time.
Okay, not. Historical Society, Rutland Historical Society. Regardless, you have to stand out in the rain.
There'll be no rain tomorrow.
Wednesday. So anyways, it's 6 p.m. We start prompt at 6. I'll be sitting there with my phone, and when it goes from 5:59 to 6, the first speaker is going to start speaking. And she's a 14-year-old leading off. And I was really encouraged when I first spoke with her. I walked away saying, golly, there are young people, there is hope. So she just, no problem. She goes, I'll start. So we're going from youngest to maturest. So,
Maybe you?
Nope. I'm in the middle somewhere. Okay, second of all, Clarendon, the rec committee on July 25th is having a 250th party at the rec fields. Tailgating style, people bring food. One word caught me right off the bat, free. The other one was hot dogs, seal the deal. So anyways, it's going to be down at the rec field. There's going to be games and activities. And I forgot, I got the cheat sheet here, but I didn't print all that. Starts at 3 p.m. at the Clarendon rec fields. So that's something to look forward to, July 25th.
They play rec field right next to the transfer station.
Right. There's some seats over here, and there's right up front, there's 3. Okay, the third event is our September 20th, 250th celebration of the death and burial of Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Waite, who is buried over there in that field, who was wounded just below Valcour Island with the Rogers Rangers. And as he was being brought down, he was from New Hampshire, and they were taking him back to New Hampshire, and then that's where he died. So they buried him there, and there's been a stone there's 2 stones now. Various organizations have maintained the site. but it was September 1776 when he passed away. And I'm not going to take any thunder from Bob, because Bob, we know a lot about the man on the historical site. Bob's been traveling to dig a few more nuggets of knowledge about the guy. But pardon?
I could say grades.
No, but anyhow, but that ceremony is September 20th, it's a Sunday. The time is 1 to 3, the actual ceremony starts at 1:30. And we've got commitment from Independent Corps Rangers from Bennington, the SAR, the DAR, and Rebecca from the Descendants of the Green Mountain Boys. And basically everything's kind of falling in place. The only thing is I hope the field gets mowed. But other than that, that's September 20th from 1 to 3. It's a Sunday. Okay? With that, I'm going to turn this over to Rebecca Hougher. She is the president of the Descendants of the Green Mountain Boys. She's the one you came to listen to tonight. And we're going to take a quick second to change our microphone over, because this is a cone receiving microphones about 12 inches. And
thank you, Kevin, for inviting me. And this is actually under the Clarendon Historical Society. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you for all you and so many people here do for history in Vermont. All of you could probably give this talk maybe better than I can, but bear with me, and I will tell you about how we ended up creating our organization. Just a quick poll too, how many people here have done their genealogy? Like everybody? Does everybody have a family tree? Yeah, and has anybody helped other people do their own research? Okay, cool. All right, so Barry, did you want to, what's this? So we'll spend a few minutes on the history of Vermont and what was called the New Hampshire Grants, now Vermont, and forces that shaped it. So you can, yep. By the mid-1700s,
Hold on.
whoops,
You wrong.
there we go. I think if you just,
Gotcha.
cool.
Rebecca, maybe you could move the mic up.
More?
I thought it was really on very loud. For those of us who are challenged. I hope it works.
That's me. I don't know if,
the mic is for the video.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
oh, I thought it was a projecting voice.
Sorry.
Okay, I'll try to speak louder. Thank you. By the mid-1700s, the large families of colonists and the tradition of primogeniture, where the oldest son inherited the land, it forced families, new families, to move further west and in some cases north. You can hit it. They came from Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. There were Scotch-Irish immigrants, and also New York. An example is Micah Vale, the sixth child of 9, and in his father's will gave him a, am I standing in the way of this? No, gave him a horse. So that's not enough to start a family. He moved to Beekman's Patent, Dutchess County, New York in 1753. He and fellow New Englanders were used to freehold land ownership, which was in conflict with their Dutch overlords, the Crown, and New York authorities. By 1766, New York Governor Moore proclaimed Micah and other rioters guilty of high treason and offered rewards for their capture. Micah had already moved to Danby, being one of the first 5 settlers to move there. And yes, in the pre-revolutionary period, the colonies didn't tax churches, but they forced citizens to pay taxes to them. Samuel Robinson, a veteran of the French and Indian War, was a separatist or a New Light proponent, and he refused to pay state taxes. In 1761, Robinson led 30 families from Hardwick, Massachusetts to Bennington and advocated for the rights of the settlers in the New Hampshire grants. After imprisonment in New York, he was sent as a representative to London to advocate for the grants, and he died there in 1767 of smallpox. Okay. Jedediah Dewey became Bennington's first pastor August 14, 1763. He disagreed also with mandatory church taxes. He was also a leader in the separatist movement, breaking away from Puritan state churches in Massachusetts and Connecticut. The town of Bennington chose to support him through free will pledges rather than compulsory taxes. His son, Captain Elijah Dewey, was at the capture of Fort Ty, the battles of Bennington and Saratoga. He also had a tavern, which many of the early New England people, and especially the Green Mountain Boys, had. Okay. The greatest external force came after the French and Indian War. The British colonial governors of New Hampshire and New York both claimed jurisdiction over land in present-day Vermont. During the 1760s, New Hampshire Governor Benning Wentworth made grants west of the Connecticut River, while New York Governor Colden issued patents east of the Connecticut River. In 1764, there's pictures of those handsome guys. They always seem to be kind of heavy. I don't know what the governors, they were making all this money on the land grants. In 1764, the Crown Board of Trade ruled in favor of New York, and by 65, New York sold land to speculators James Duane, John Kemp, and Philip Skeen. Needless to say, the settlers and the grants, who had already paid New Hampshire and had been clearing and working their land, sometimes for several years, were not about to let New York take their land. A militia was formed in Bennington in 1764, which is what we consider the start of the Green Mountain Boys. Contested property ownership escalated, and this is a good, you're probably all familiar with this, the contested part claimed by both New Hampshire and New York. Curious, how many people here have been in Vermont since this time? And quite a few, yeah. So militia was formed 64. Contested property ownership escalated, and one of the most famous was the Breckenridge standoff. On July 19, 1771, New York Sheriff Henry Van Eyck, with a large posse, was sent to James Breckenridge's farm in Bennington to eject him, but they were met by the Green Mountain Boys and Seth Warner and Robert Cochran. And they turned them back without, no shots were fired, but there was enough of them that the posse left. A private militia turning back and organized New York power was a huge moral victory. The event has been called the birthplace of Vermont. And this mural, sure, yeah. Here.
I'm not sure why I'm doing here.
Just hit it in the middle there. This mural was painted in 1937 by Stephen Belaski and is at the old Rutland Post Office on West Street. The Green Mountain Boys continued the land war. There we go. In 1771, Governor Tryon offered, and this is depicting what the Green Mountain Boys, they just were strongly discouraging people from New York. So they continued their land war, and in 1771, New York Governor Tryon offered a 20-pound reward for Allen Warner and their cousin, Remember Baker. It grew to 50 pounds in 74 and doubled to 100 pounds in 1775. They were heroes in the grants and outlaws in New York. And these are some of our favorite disparagement or slurs. I need another word for this. I don't know what to call it, but here's some of them. So the Bennington mob was what the New York authorities called them. Vagabonds and fugitives, the 1772 New York Supreme Court rioters, the warrants. Devils of the Green Mountains, that was Sheriff John Monroe. And the most abandoned wretches that ever lived to be bound by no laws or ties. That was Governor William Tryon. Ruffians or land pirates. I have a couple more. One of my favorite ones, I had somebody apply to Descendants last year from Ontario, Canada. He'd been living there 5 generations, but somehow he discovered he had a Green Mountain boy. And his family told him they were gun robbers. That was because they took the guns from Fort Ticonderoga. It's one of my favorite contemporary slurs. Innumerable books have been written about Vermont in the Revolutionary era. And this is a really, really short summation of that time. So in 1775, a plan was hatched even before the shot heard round the world, depicted here. April 19th, 1775, in Concord, Massachusetts. The plan was to covertly gather enough men from Connecticut, Massachusetts, and the Grants to capture New York forts Ticonderoga and Crown Point and protect the northern route used by the British. Led by Ethan Allen, the brilliant plan was successful, and the captured cannon, a few more, Tom Hughes isn't here, I can't believe it. And anyway, Tom always makes the point that there were more captured cannon at Crown Point than Fort Ty, but don't tell Fort Ty. So then these cannon were transported by a young Henry Knox to Dorchester Heights and ended the siege of Boston. In 1776, the Dorset Convention, having heard about the Declaration of Independence, just decided that Vermont was truly independent and owed no allegiance to the Crown, and definitely not New York. It formally declared independence January 15th, 1777 in Westminster. Meanwhile, as I said, this is a really quick history of Vermont. Meanwhile, Vermont and the Green Mountain Boys had to mount defenses from the northern invasion by General Burgoyne. They abandoned Fort Ticonderoga and Mount Independence, made a historic stand at Hubbardton. There we are. Which is sometimes called the rearguard action that saved the northern armies. And then delegates that were at Windsor creating a constitution quickly drafted the Constitution. And one more. So here I have a short, I just learned about this. A lot of people ask about where did the Green Mountain Boy flag come from? What was its origin? And most people say, well, it was Stark's flag. But we were at a talk up at Hubbardton a couple weeks ago, and Mark Brownell made a presentation, and he provided this new information. So July 8th in Windsor, the fathers of Vermont's new republic, finishing the ratification when they received word of the Battle of Hubbardton. Right then and there, they formed a temporary regiment ordered to be to defend the military aggression of Burgoyne's troops. Colonel Samuel Herrick's regiment of Green Mountain Rangers was formed. At this time, a regimental flag was raised over, oh, I should say, this wonderful image was created by Sean Harrington of Manchester using AI. He was very proud of it and shared it with me. It's kind of cool. At the time, a regimental flag was raised over the shelters of the Ranger camp. This is, again, is Samuel Herrick's. At the Battle of Bennington, Herrick's men had been flying the flag, a light green cloth with a blue field with 13 stars hand sewn on it. The flag was made by the women of Herrick's camp. Even supposedly the light blue was shirts that the men had. After the Battle of Bennington, it was presented to General Stark, here's the Battle of Bennington, And it was given to Stark for his leadership in the great victory over the British and the defense of Bennington. Tom should be here. This is Tom. Huzzah! So after the Battle of Saratoga, the new Republic of Vermont was so complicated with many, many factions. Patriots like the Green Mountain Boys, people who sided with New York and their claims, loyalists or Tories who wished to remain British subjects, and people who changed their loyalties, like Justice Sherwood, who had been a Green Mountain Boy and friend of Ethan Allen, but eventually sided with and spied for the British. Patriots seized and sold loyalist properties, forcing many to move to Canada. Most perplexing were the Haldeman negotiations, which continued from 1780 to 1783, when the Treaty of Paris was signed, ending the Revolution. Ethan and Ira Allen had secret talks with British Governor Frederick Haldeman of Quebec, while the Continental Congress continued to deny Vermont from becoming a state. They discussed Vermont becoming a British province in exchange for prisoners. The British refrained, during this time, the British refrained from more aggression against the Grants and also helped reduce the Indian raids. The Allens were accused of treason. We don't really know what they were really thinking, but it worked out because the Grants were able to stay independent, and when the war ended in 1783, things died down. But however, New York still wouldn't ratify, wouldn't let Vermont become a state until 1790, when they agreed to admit Vermont if Vermont paid $30,000 in silver dollars. Wait. So Vermont voted January 10th, 1791 to ratify the new Constitution, and on March 6, 1791, Congress admitted Vermont for the 14th state. Okay. Can everybody read this? My mom passed in 1998, and I inherited all of her research and my dad's mother's research, and it was in a 90s or very old suitcase. And they were all notes like this. My grandmother traveled up all over New England, stayed in hotels, Pittsfield Inn, and wrote in longhand, in pencil, and I just had pages and pages like this. And I had to say I wept a little bit. I just didn't know what to do with it. But then I bought a genealogy program, and I just started putting in the names, and it got a lot easier. As I learned more about my family, this is a picture of Asnath Warner, which is literally only 5 miles from where I grew up in Fairhaven. And anybody that comes to visit me, they usually have to go down and see her grave. She is the granddaughter of Colonel Seth Warner. And just amazing that they stayed so close. My mom, she married Samuel McFerrin, and my mother's maiden name was McFerrin. I was fortunate to be able to prove, my mother, she charged me. She brought me down to this, and she said, you have to prove this. And it was hard, but because it was in New York, if anybody's done research in Washington County, you know it's difficult. We were able to prove it. Let's see. So anyway, and just, I will say, doing research on the Green Mountain Boys, I was more and more impressed with what they had accomplished with the land war, and they never killed anybody, formed the Republic of Vermont, and contributed to the cause of American independence. And because we were a republic, not a colony, I consider Vermont America's first ally before France. Just, again, we weren't, you're not convinced. you. Anyway, I asked Cliff Mullen, who at the time was head of Warner's Recreated Regiment, to give advice on certain parameters for creating our lineage society. And he said, number one, use the first 1764 militia, Bennington, as a start date. And then I have a couple of copies of the list of that first militia. It's over on the table, you can see. And 1781 is the end, which was the dissolution of Seth Warner's regiment. This differs from the Daughters and Sons of the American Revolution. They continue through 1783 when the war ended with the signing of the Treaty of Paris. Okay. Then I looked into my father's family. He is my fifth great grandfather, Timothy Allen Sr., served in the French and Indian War, mustered in 1757 from Woodbury, Connecticut for the alarm at Fort William Henry. By 1768, he had settled in Paulet. He knew Ethan Allen because they were both from Woodbury, Connecticut. They weren't cousins, which is in the history of Fairhaven. So hard to change that once it's writing. But they were good friends because when Ethan Allen was marching north to capture Fort Ticonderoga, he bivouacked his man on Timothy Allen's land. He had 6 sons, Timothy, and sure you can. They all served in Green Mountain Boy regiments. He died in 1810 and was buried in an unmarked grave next to his son Caleb in the North Paulet Cemetery. Using Peggy Jenks' cemetery books of Rutland County, I found Caleb's stone, and I asked Keith Barker of West Rutland, Bowker and Son, who's also a descendant of Timothy, if he would help me with a stone. And this was before, I didn't have Kevin to give me the idea of the plaques that he's making, so I got a stone. So Keith made a stone and sent it with these 2 gentlemen. One, the guy in the green shirts, his name is Critter because he liked to pick up roadkill and cook it. And it takes all kinds. They did a great job. Even when they were digging, they were telling me next to Caleb's stone that they were sure that there was a place there had been a burial. You would probably know this. I don't know. 200 years after, would you feel something like that? Uh-huh. Yeah. And it was fun because my husband was visiting from Iowa and got to see this whole thing. I love that in Vermont you can just do sort of what you want in a cemetery. I kept asking who I needed to ask for permission, and there was nobody to ask. We're fortunate to live in Vermont. Many vital records are online. It's been the most fun to look into people's family trees, meaning I create one, and sometimes I surprise people with what I can find if they have a Green Mountain Boy. Tom Hughes has been one of the most fun ones, and this is Tom, who was astounded, as you can see. I don't think that was the moment that he discovered he had a Green Mountain Boy, but his ancestor was Stukely Thornton from Ira, who served under Green Mountain Boy Captain Abram Salisbury. And Captain Salisbury is Kevin Peck's ancestor, which was also a surprise for Kevin. Descendants Tom Hughes, Peter Huntoon, and Julian Sharo all served under Captain Salisbury. We were able to get Tom's mother into the DAR just 2 months before she passed, which was so satisfying. She loved it. When she received her certificate at Ann Story DAR, she made a little acceptance speech. And then, so this is one of my favorite stones. Whoops. No, we got some other. Okay. This stone is Tom's fifth great grandmother, who was Anna Colvin Thornton. And the stone, at the time that I discovered it in Ira, on the backside of Birdside, there was a tree literally growing all around it. Now they've cut the tree down. I think it's a beautiful stone. And apparently a descendant who had been there 20 years before found a stone for Stukely, but sadly that disappeared. Yeah. And this is Julianne. I couldn't fit her in anywhere else. She has been on her farm 7 generations, and now they have 3 more generations that are living on the same farm. And I've mentioned Micah Vale a few times. He was, again, a well-known rider who moved to Danby and respected for his riding skills. Ethan Allen wrote a note to him on the back of a '74 pamphlet that Ethan published in response to New York warrants for Green Mountain Boy arrests. It was like a long newspaper because Ethan Allen was very wordy. But specifically this note on the back to Captain Micah Vale: "Sir, I make you a present of this paper, and if on a perusal you should approve thereof, it would add greatly to my satisfaction, as I should hope you would be animated to form the inhabitants of your town into military order and assume your former command and assist us in humbling the haughty land jobbers at New York. If such an event should take place in your town, it would be gratefully acknowledged by the Green Mountain Boys and particularly by your humble servant, Ethan Allen." Micah was a captain of the Green Mountain Boys, and June 8th, 1777, he and his wife, Mary Briggs, died the same day after being poisoned by a Tory doctor while they were recovering from measles. They're very heavy dual stone. The first time Kevin came to see it, he thought he would just sort of wiggle it straight, but it was a bigger project than that. So he kindly, and this is in the Danby Reed Cemetery, he brought his son Jonathan and Bob to help straighten it. And I'm so grateful. I'm sure you can hit another. There they are. The other organization that has helped inspire Descendants, Green Mountain Boys, is the Crown Point Road Association. We have the secretary here, Dale, thank you. Thanks to a 2020 tour led by Jim Rowe to Ann Story's cabin site, a 6-year restoration project culminated May 30th this year with the dedication of a new roadside historic marker and a wonderful celebration of Ann Story's life. These are all descendants except for Laura, and who presented the plaque. They came from, descendants of Ann Story came from South Carolina, South Dakota, and Kansas City, Missouri. None of them had ever been to Vermont before, and now they're all descendants of Green Mountain, the mother of the Green Mountain Boys, Ann Story. By 2014, the obvious move was to create a lineage society to honor the Green Mountain Boys. We created a logo, Life, Liberty, and Property, and developed a website with information and an application. We follow the principles of the DAR and the SAR with requirements of proving lineage and service. But we have a broader timeline with starting with the first militia in 1764 and ending a little earlier. Nope, you're good. 200 years ago, July 4th, 1826, on the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, Rutland, Vermont held a major celebration that included a parade honoring surviving Revolutionary War veterans. According to contemporary accounts in the Rutland Herald, July 11th, 1826, around 120 Revolutionary soldiers marched in the parade wearing green sprigs in their hats. This was a widespread practice at the time, drawing directly from the Green Mountain Boy tradition during the Revolution, where they wore sprigs of evergreen in their hats to identify them as Vermont militia. The fact that all who marched identified as the Green Mountain Boys has been a guiding principle for our organization, because everybody just assumed and identified with the Green Mountain Boys. We allow membership we try to be as inclusive as possible, because it just excites people knowing that they are descended from Green Mountain Boys. And we also include ancestors who fought at the Battle of Hubbardton and Bennington. These two books are our go-to for records. Ellsworth Goodrich's Soldier Rolls for the Continental Service, and Carlton Fisk, which uses town histories, pension records, and in the case of duplicate names because sometimes there are like 6 Nathan Smiths in Vermont that served. So this Fisk book is great because it has their birth dates and sometimes their marriage partners, and it's really helpful to sort out if you have multiple names. I've learned from mistakes. The biggest one I ever made was I spent several days doing a family tree for somebody, and it was awesome. I had several Green Mountain Boys. I was so excited, and I presented it to them. And they looked at it, and she said, well, my grandmother was adopted. So now I always ask if there's an adoption. And the biggest mistake I see other people make, which is mostly men, is not following the female lines in their tree. My other example is my second cousin, Brad Little, and I'm sorry he's not with us anymore, but we were very close. He was an only son and sort of thought of me as a sister. And he was really good at research, and he'd broke some brick walls using DNA. He was very good. And he had a beautiful family tree. I think it had embroidery on it, and it was hanging on this wall in his cabin. I was looking at it, and I realized that he hadn't followed the female lines. So I gave him holy heck, because he was my cousin. A couple days later, he called back and he said, you won't believe this. I'm descended from Remember Baker. And even more remarkable than that was that his father, who was an Air Force general and flown 25 missions World War II in a B-17 bomber, he had named it the Green Mountain Rambler. You can even hit another one, it's a little closer, and had a Green Mountain Boy painted on the nose, and his dad never knew that he was descended from Remember and a Green Mountain Boy, which is just extraordinary to me that somehow his higher self knew. And you can hit that. And here's a picture of Brad. This is at the recreated Breckenridge standoff in 2021. He's presenting a commemorative plaque to Chief Master Sergeant Adrian Schultz, the mission group superintendent for the 158th Fighter Wing of Vermont Air National Guard. The need for defense for early Bennington settlers gave birth to Vermont and the Green Mountain Boys. The mission continues to this day, with Vermont Army and Air National Guard call themselves Green Mountain Boys. This other picture was at a promotion for a guardsman, and they wanted it up at Hubbardton last year, and it was attended by Warner's Green Mountain Boys. They deploy the flag, the guardsmen, wherever they are, all around the world. One more. And also, amazingly, one more, Dale was there, and a friend of ours, Jim Rowe, we decided to climb Camel's Hump. That might be the last time I get up there. But this was a couple of years ago, and we got to the top, and there was a training of the guardsmen up there. So amazing that we ended up at the same time. I had carried the flag. Great photo op. We've made several editions of shirts for our organization, and hats and mugs, and even some of the women like bling, they like charms. We've made flags to place on graves, commissioned a couple of paintings with Peter Huntoon, which has been really fun. And one of my favorite projects was I created a 1-ounce proof silver coin with our logo on one side and the 1785 Vermont copper coin on the other, the landscape coin. And that's over on the table with the 1st Militia. So, in conclusion, no, you can leave it, you're good. Along with helping people discover their early Vermont ancestors and learning history as I do this, it's kind of become a mission. The way our ancestors did research, visiting courthouses and libraries, is still valid, but genealogy has just exploded in terms of what you can do. Billions of records are online, and much is free, for instance, on Family Search. Really knowledgeable historians may not even realize what's possible. As we celebrate the 250th, it's estimated that 60% of Americans have at least one ancestor that was here during the American Revolution. That's 183 million people. I tried to do the math, figuring out how many might be descendants of Green Mountain Boys, but I need somebody else to help me with that. When people learn about and visit where their ancestors actually lived, farmed, fought, ministered, founded, and survived, personal history becomes very real and tangible, not abstract and distant. And back to the 183 million, we are connected by blood. It's a chain of life that for now ends with us. So we encourage people to share with friends and family. We're way more connected than we know, and these days I feel it's important to realize we have more in common than perhaps what separates us. So that, I feel, can shape a more hopeful future. Thank you. Any questions? Yes?
Is there any history, either oral or written, regarding how many smaller militias were annexed by Seth Warner and the Green Mountain Boys?
Oh boy, that'd be a great question for Cliff Mullen. Yes, probably. I haven't dug that deep into
I
it.
was just curious because I know, given history and the location of this area,
Yeah.
Clarendon in particular,
Yeah,
there were a number, from what I understand, a number of smaller militias around here that were extremely important.
well, Abram Salisbury is a good example. He was just sort of an independent militia on his own. And again, several people, but initially he had service down under Warner. I find one record for him. And then he had been in the French and Indian War. Supposedly there were 500 men in Warner's regiment, so absolutely they had to be, from different. But I don't have that list.
Thank you.
Yeah. I do get questions from people because on our website we have a list of proven to our organization, Green Mountain Boys, and people say, well, you don't have so-and-so on there, but it's only proven by people that have applied to us. Yes,
How many members do you have in the organization now?
thank you. 483. We've been doing this since 2014, which I think is pretty decent. People, I don't advertise, people just are finding us, and Facebook is helpful. I'm not a huge Facebook fan, but in terms of networking with other organizations like VOCA, like Crown Point Road, and the DAR, SAR, and local history chapters like you all here, it's great. it's the networking that means so much, and I've just made so many friends working with other groups. Thank you.